Or what?
They're leaning into woke. Hardcore.
They're petrified of some kind of backlash.
I wanted my money back. It was very disappointing.
Who wants a movie about true love? What kind of woman do we want out there seeking true love, Eliana? The outrage.
Every way that Disney changed the story, it changed it for the worse.
They're pretending like Rachel Zegler is the first of them all when she looks like Lord Farquaad in the film.
The new Disney boss babe, who is Rachel Zegler, the inverse of happy.
So she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
No one on the right side of America can stand the star of this movie.
Rachel Zegler, like so many kids raised on TikTok, she's all for infantada is the only global solution.
Now, I'm guessing that she's not married. I'm guessing that she doesn't have kids. The movie is a complete disaster, by the way.
Have they ever thought about maybe like a little bit of like, I don't know, vulnerability study, opposition research, that sort of thing, before you go and hire some Zoomer who's a lunatic?
So apparently, according to them and according to the writers of Snow White, women can't even want to be in love anymore.
Rachel Zegler is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged.
They spent $170 million to make the thing, and it had the lowest opening, under $50 million, of any of these live-action Disney remakes that they've ever had.
And, you know the saying, go woke, get broke, and Disney's going to lose money on this movie. And I believe it only made less than $1 million in China.
Joe Rogan and Bill Maher barely see eye to eye. But when it comes to Rachel Zegler's woke Snow White remake, they're in full agreement. This isn't just a bad movie, it's a full-blown disaster. A film that cost hundreds of millions and may have just ended Zegler's career. A remake that stripped away everything people loved, insulted half the audience, and left theaters empty. What went wrong? How did Disney manage to turn a beloved fairy tale into a cultural punchline? And is Rachel Zegler to blame? Let's break down the collapse of a film, a franchise, and possibly a future in Hollywood. Rachel Zegler was supposed to be Disney's next breakout star. Instead, she became the face of one of their biggest disasters.
The movie is doing catastrophically. They spent $300 million, and it currently has a 2.2 out of 10 rating on IMDb.
The movie has a major identity crisis.
This is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive.
It's got extra musical numbers that are incredibly unnecessary that really add to that runtime. And let me go ahead and let you know that they're absolutely atrocious.
Disney deleted Someday My Prince Will Come and made a modernized feminist alternative.
I sat through the whole thing. This was really bad. It was extremely leftist on every political dimension: racial politics, sexual politics, class politics, regime politics. Its narrative was cowardly. It was just awful.
What started as a bold remake ended in embarrassment. A $200 million film. A political firestorm, and box office numbers so low, people thought they were fake. Snow White wasn't just a flop, it was a warning shot. And Zegler, she may never work in Hollywood again. The original Snow White was more than just a fairy tale. Released in 1937, it was the first full-length animated feature of its kind. It helped build Disney's empire. A simple story of love, innocence, and magic, with iconic dwarfs and a princess who dreamed of true love. But when Disney announced the live-action remake, something was already off. The plot was changed, the romance was gone, and the dwarfs were replaced with strange CGI creatures. Instead of honoring tradition, Disney looked like it was rewriting it from scratch. Rachel Zegler didn't help. In interviews, she mocked the original film.
A prince or a different kind of prince? I'm sure a lot of people will assume it's a love story just because, we cast a guy in the movie. Right. Andrew Burnap, great dude. Yeah. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
She said Snow White wouldn't be saved by a prince. That dreaming of love was outdated. It came off smug. Like she was above the story she was paid to tell. And that was just the beginning. Old social media posts began to resurface. Zegler had publicly blasted half the country, telling Trump supporters to never know peace, posting F Donald Trump, suggesting his voters deserved harm. Even people who didn't support Trump were stunned, because when you're the face of a family movie, you don't go scorched earth on families. The backlash was instant, and Disney trapped in the middle.
So she came out and took a large dump on half of the country, everyone who voted for Trump.
But you are not entitled to call for Trump supporters to be harmed. Like, you are actually not entitled to do that. And so let me just remind you, Rachel Zegler, of what the map looks like, just so you can understand when your Disney movie is coming out, how many people you are wishing harm upon. Like, this is America right now. I will love you through these 4 years as best I can. F Donald Trump. Yeah, totally stable thing for her to be posting, wishing harm upon Trump voters, wishing that we have no peace.
President Rachel Zegler also posted, F Trump kinds of posts on social media. She also said that she hoped that Trump supporters, quote, never know peace.
And they postponed the release of this thing, Ben, for a year because their star, Rachel Zegler, was so unlikable, told all Trump supporters that they could off, excuse me, but she did. That was just in November. They didn't even know she was going to do that one.
Even Joe Rogan and Bill Maher, two people who rarely agree, saw the disaster coming. Rogan said the film proved Hollywood now fears backlash more than it values entertainment. Bill Maher mocked the decision to call the prince a stalker and remove the romance. He said woke culture tried so hard to be progressive, it ended up being offensive, especially to little person actors who lost roles they'd waited their whole careers for. And then came the dwarfs, or the lack of them. Peter Dinklage spoke out. He said casting little people was offensive. Disney panicked. They replaced them with awkward CGI magical creatures.
Because you just can't close your mouth. You just can't be sane, even when you do open your mouth. I think this girl does not deserve a feature-length film, but rather, she deserves to be in a padded cell.
Not only did they erase beloved characters, they erased real job opportunities. Little person actors pushed back. They said these were roles made for them. And now, they were gone. Fans were furious. The dwarfs weren't just background characters, they were heart. Now, just digital placeholders.
Did the dwarfs make it or no?
Well, the CGI dwarfs did. Of course, that goes back to the original controversy where Peter Dinklage, a very talented little person actor, said, why are we doing that? We've hired a Latina actress to be Snow White. That's progressive. But you're going to hire little people to play the dwarfs? That just seems like a step backwards. And then, of course, Disney instantly buckled and said, okay, we're going to add magical creatures.
Then they got even crazier and they decided that the dwarves in Snow White weren't woke enough, okay?
Behind the scenes, full-blown panic. Executives ordered reshoots. They hired media handlers to monitor Zegler's social media. At one point, she promoted the film, then immediately tweeted, "Free Palestine." It set off another wave of controversy. Some insiders pushed to bury the movie completely. Others said layoffs were coming. Snow White was the tipping point. Zegler didn't back down. She doubled down. She said she was proud of the changes, proud the character didn't need a man, proud of the modern message. But the audience didn't want a lecture. They wanted magic. They wanted romance. They wanted something that felt like Disney, not a TED Talk.
These big bad feminists now are telling us that's ridiculous. How dare you want to meet a handsome prince and be swept off of your feet and live happily ever after? No, you should want to be the prince. You should want to go out and fight the bad guys with a sword.
This wasn't just a bad movie. It became a symbol of what happens when studios lose touch. When they throw out tradition and replace it with ideology. When the star mocks the very people buying tickets. Even perfect CGI can't fix that. Because when people feel disrespected, they stay home. So now everyone's asking, what happens next? Will Disney pivot? Will they return to what made them great? Or is this just the beginning of a trend that audiences keep rejecting?
They've been in a full meltdown about this girl for a couple of years now, and how they had her tweet out like a little, "Yay, Snow White, can't wait, so excited, I love to play her." And she did it and got like millions of views, and they were like, "Good job, Rachel." And then she, like, minutes later, followed it up with, "And never forget, free Palestine." And then they had to hire a special media consultant for her to follow her around all the time and make sure she didn't continue shitting on Snow White.
And what about Zegler? Studios are nervous, not because of her talent, but because of her baggage. She went from rising star to lightning rod. In the end, this wasn't just a box office failure, it was a cultural one. You can't erase core themes, insult your audience, and expect applause. Snow White was supposed to be timeless. Instead, it became a cautionary tale. The moral of the story? Don't lecture your viewers, don't mock tradition, And never forget why people loved the story in the first place. Because if even Disney can fail, anyone can.